Everyone was telling me like social media and all of this is going to drive the sales, but it was really email that drove the sales. I made $12,000 in the first 24 hours.
Wow. Nathan Barry, one of the most respected voices in the creator economy and the brains behind Kit, the software company that's powering over 50,000 creators, including names like Tim Ferriss and James Clear. What you think, the good and the bad of AI?
One thing that I'm worried about is AI taking out the bottom rung of every career ladder. But I worry that if AI eliminates the bottom rungs of all of these jobs, then...
You talk about the creator flywheel, how that's different from traditional marketing funnels.
Every step moves super smoothly into the next. It gets easier with each rotation. We can optimize our conversion rates, make our landing page better, calls to action, all of that.
Somebody on YouTube or a creator on social media, how can they leverage this flywheel concept?
YouTube is a very algorithm-driven platform. So if you have 10,000 subscribers, that is not a guarantee that you get 10,000 views. We could complain about the new social media algorithms, or you could instead...
Spotify offered you $200 million and you turned it down. Why? YAP Gang, this episode is a must listen if you're building anything online. Today we're sitting down with Nathan Barry, one of the most respected voices in the creator economy and the brains behind Kit, the software that's powering over 50,000 creators, including names like Tim Ferriss and James Clear. Nathan went from being a shy, homeschooled kid who loved making things to then building a $40 million a year company. And he did it all without venture capital. No shortcuts, just grit, purpose, and brilliant frameworks that we'll unpack in this episode. We're talking about the exact strategies Nathan used to grow from self-publishing his first book to turning down a $200 million offer from Spotify. Because what he's building isn't just a company, it's a mission rooted in creator ownership and long-term value. In this episode, you'll learn about his creator flywheel and why it blows traditional marketing funnels out of the water. We'll also break down his ladders of wealth creation and explore why teaching everything you know can become your greatest growth lever. If you've ever wondered how to turn your audience into a business or your passion into profit, this is your blueprint. So grab your coffee, your journal, whatever you need, because this episode is stacked with practical gems that could totally shift your approach with your creator journey. And if this is your first time listening to the show, go ahead and hit that follow or subscribe button. We drop gems like this every single week, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Nathan, welcome to Young and Profiting Podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
I'm really excited for this conversation. I love to talk about creator entrepreneurship. So when I was researching your background, I found out that you were a really shy kid and you always loved to build and sell things. So talk to me about what point did you feel like, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur when I grow up?
Yeah, I like to make money. And if you want to make money, you probably either need to be an entrepreneur or maybe pursue a career in sales, which I guess is pretty entrepreneurial in itself. And so maybe when I was 12 or 13, around that time, I noticed that we really didn't have much money as a family. And so I noticed a lot of conflict that came from that and just struggles. And so I thought like, okay, I got to figure out how I can make money so that I'll never have those same struggles in my life. And so I had a bunch of different ventures. One of the first ones was a pet sitting business where we'd get paid $10 a day to go to someone's house and let their pets out and, water their plants and all that. Or $10 each time we went over. So sometimes it was $20 a day, which was fantastic money. And let's see, what else? I got into woodworking. My family always made things. Like my dad built the house we grew up in. We had a little wood shop. And so I'd make these like wood carvings and sell them door to door or at craft fairs. And that made even better money. And then things didn't really take off until I got into web design a few years later. But those were some of the early ventures.
Yeah, I loved learning about your background story because it was really unique and I didn't really expect a lot of the things that I learned. So I learned that you were homeschooled. And I also learned that you got into college early and then you dropped out at like 17 years old.
Yeah.
Crazy. That's like a wild, just those in itself is really unique. So talk to us about your experience getting homeschooled and then what made you realize like, I don't even want to do structured school at all.
Yeah, well, there were two pivotal moments for me in homeschooling. So first, I have three older siblings. And so my mom homeschooled all of us. And she'd really figured out the system and the curriculum and all of that with my older siblings. And one of the best things about homeschooling, or maybe two great things about it. One is it's really tailored to you as an individual. And so you're not waiting for an entire class, or a class is not waiting for you, right? So if a subject takes you longer to figure out, that's fine. You have time. Or if you get something in 20 minutes, it's not like the class spends the next hour working on it while there's someone else that we're waiting on. And so that was one thing that was fantastic. And then the other is that it really teaches you early on that you're in charge. And my parents drilled this in. This is your responsibility. We're here to help you. But whether you get it done or not is on you, and the consequences follow, or the benefits follow as well. And so that's a lot like real life, and especially a lot like business. So one key moment was when I was probably 11 or 12. We grew up in the mountains outside of Boise, and there was a time that in the winter that we just had the most perfect snow coming down. It was the kind of thing where you don't want to be sitting inside doing school. You want to be outside sledding. And I'm just like sitting here and I can't focus at all. I'm just staring outside, watching the snow accumulate. And my mom says, you know, you don't have to do school for like 4 or 5 hours. You only have to do school until it's done. And then you can go play outside. If that takes you 90 minutes, amazing. If that takes you 4 hours, like, all right, well, that's on you, you know? And so all the usual like complaining and lack of focus and everything else that I would do was immediately gone. It was like, all right, well, let's power through. Let's get math, let's get literature. Like, let's knock all this out. And this is like the most focused 11-year-old you've ever seen. And 90 minutes later, I'm outside sledding. School's done. And it took me a while to internalize that lesson. But I realized, like, basically, there's no speed limit at all. You get to set the pace.
Mm.
Changed my entire worldview because I'm like, wait a second. Why have I been wasting all this time having school take 4 hours or 5 hours a day when I could just actually sit down and focus and knock this out? And that's on me. So that was one thing. And then a few years later, I realized that all of my friends were older than me. My older siblings were great at letting me like hang out with them, and their friends were my friends, and they were super inclusive. And that was great until I realized, like, oh, you all are going to go to college. And I'm like, this age gap that didn't matter before is going to be really obvious when I still have, 2.5 years of school left and we're all gone. And so I went back to my mom and I said, so is high school, because I'm just now starting to enter high school or think about it, is high school a set amount of work or 4 years? And she's like, look, same philosophy. I've outlined all the curriculum for your older siblings. If you get that done in 3 years, you can graduate in 3 years, or even sooner if you want. And I remember thinking that I was really bored when I did math. And I was also really bored when we'd go on these family road trips, like an 8-hour drive to Seattle. And so I was like, why don't I just combine these two? And so I basically just did a speed run through as many school subjects and curriculum as I could. And on like these family road trips, I would do like a month's worth of math homework. And every time I get stuck, I'd have, an older brother sitting next to me who I could be like, all right, what's the deal with this pre-calculus? And he would explain. And so the end result is I ended up graduating high school when I was 15, a little before I turned 16, and then going to college and only being slightly behind my much older friends. And it just really drilled in this idea of like, there is no speed limit. You set the pace.
I love that so much. So then you got to college, first real school experience. Is that right?
Yeah. So we always had, my mom made us take all the standardized tests for like middle school and high school. It was kind of funny. We'd ask like, okay, what's a good grade as we did this? And it was always in percentiles. And so it wasn't a score. It was like how you scored relative to all the other students. And she would say, so long as you get in the 95th percentile, we're good. And so I remember thinking like, okay, you have to be in the 95th percentile. And we'd get like 98th in one thing and 99th in another, all that. I'm like, sweet, we're good. It wasn't until later I realized like what that actually means. And that means that, that you've scored higher than 95% or 98% of all the kids who took that. It's just that's the way that my mom anchored it. And had I fully understood it, I would have been like, Mom, that's an insanely high bar. But she's like, what? Homeschooled. Like, basically, everyone always had this idea of like, oh, you're getting an inferior education was sort of the common thing. And so she counteracted that by saying like, no, you're going to learn so well that, you're
You'll
at the
do
top of
better
your
than
game.
everybody else. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So that was our like check-in to standardized school. But yeah, college was the first time, in an outside classroom and all of that. I also showed up when I was 15. So
That must have been tough.
one funny thing is a friend of mine who had also been homeschooled, and she was a couple years older. She had started college when she was 16, and she gave me some advice on to never answer the question of how old you are because everyone will immediately treat you differently, but to not lie about it. And so her method, which I adopted, is when someone come up because you'd be sitting in math class and they'd be like, "How how old are you?" you know, and instead of saying, "Oh, I'm 15," I would say, "Guess," and they'd look at me and be like, "Okay, well, he looks 15, but he's in a college freshman class, so which makes him 18, so 17?" And I would just say, "Oh, good guess," because like it was a good guess. It was wrong, but it was a good guess. And then they would be forever thinking and be like, "Yeah, this kid's 17 and he's in class." And I'm like, I just never corrected it. And so,
I love
but
that.
that meant that people would, at least somewhat accept and include me. Um, and then I learned a lot in college, like all of the, navigating classes and living on my own. I ended up living in a house just off campus with my older siblings, um, and that was a good experience. And then I just kept learning and trying to figure out more ways to make money.
Yeah, which led you to dropping out of school and starting web design, right? You started doing like stuff on the internet to make money. So talk to us about your evolution of trying to make money on the internet, what really stuck first, and then how you really got into email marketing, precursor to ConvertKit.
Yeah. So I uh, probably at 2004. So I was born in 1990. So I was 14, and there was like my very first like high school girlfriend introduced me to web design, and nothing came of that relationship except for my entire career. So she was the one who showed me like, hey, you can build a website and put it on GeoCities. You can write HTML and all of this stuff. So I became obsessed, and I remember I built a website for the Idaho Chess Association. My younger brothers played chess, and I got paid $75 to design a logo and $300 to design that website. And that was like my first freelance income, maybe when I was 15 or so. And then as I was going to college, I kept taking on more design projects and learning how to build websites more and doing all of that. And then when I was 17, I'd spent 2 years in college at this point, and I landed my first $10,000 web design project. And I called up my mom and I said, like, look, I'm here to learn how to make money. I'm pretty sure like I'm making money now. And so she was like, yeah, if you want to drop out, like go for it. And so I ended up dropping out and doing freelance web design for a couple more years. Now in 2009, so I've been freelancing for almost 2 full years at that point. Um, I guess the end of 2008, I had like my best month ever. I landed a bunch of clients. That was going really well. And then I went away on a trip to South Africa with my girlfriend at the time, now wife, and a bunch of friends. And we worked at this orphanage in South Africa and like did these amazing trips. And I took 5 weeks off, which I felt really good about because my freelance business was going so well. And when I came back, all the clients that I had lined up to work with, they all were like, we're not spending money because it was then like the financial crisis had fully hit. And so I went from feeling awesome about my freelance business to be like, this is going well at all. And so the quick version of all of it is I ended up taking a job at the one client that was still spending money, which was a company called Unity Media Group. And I ended up leading the design team for them. They were like 2 people when I joined, and they raised a bunch of venture capital, like scaled up the team. And I spent 3 years there, learned really a ton, like the basics of leading a team, all of that. And that was actually the last real job that I've had. The only 3 jobs I've had in my life are uh, working at Wendy's in high school, I worked for the Boise State University bookstore very briefly. And then I worked for this company, Unity, on their software design team. But
Wow,
a
you're
cool
a
thing that,
true entrepreneur.
yeah. And then I've been running Kit for the last 12 years. So it's just like unemployable is probably the the technical term that
Yeah, or super ambitious and wanting to create your own offers and things like that.
and all of that.
We have a lot in common. Like I actually started doing freelance web design in college and did that as like a freelancer while I was working at a radio station. You also got into blogging, right? So talk to us about like at what point you started blogging and then how you discovered email marketing.
Yeah. So in the web design world, people would always say like, "Oh, you're self-taught," and I was like, "That's kind of true." But really, all of my teachers for learning web design were all of these bloggers who were writing about here's how to do this thing in CSS. Here's these Photoshop techniques and all that. So it was really I felt like self taught was always kind of a weird thing. Like, no, I had teachers, I didn't know them, but this amazing community on the internet were my teachers. I was just self motivated to go through and learn the material myself and all of that. So probably from 2007 onwards, I was following a lot of blogs, first web design and then kind of into business and on from there. And then a couple things happened. First, the company I worked for in 2010, the iPad came out and they said, "Hey, we want to have an app in the App Store the day the iPad is released. And we want you to design it." And I had no idea what I was doing. And so myself and then a couple developers in the company had sort of this trial by fire of learning how to design and build iPad apps. And we pulled it off. We had the app released, um, got to, you know, see it on day one and do all this. And that sent me down this path of learning how to design for the iPhone and iPad specifically. And then probably for the next 2 or 3 years, that was all I did. I did other things too, but that's all I wanted to do. Because it was just so much fun designing for like a physical device, and the form factors were so different from the basics of web design. And so that continued until I started building my own apps, and I would code them myself and get help from my developer friends, and I'd do the design. And I got to the point where a few of my apps were making a couple $1,000s a year, and um, with that, or sorry, a couple $1,000s a month. And with that, I decided to quit my job, go back to freelance, and I sort of had this baseline of product income, and then I started doing more freelancing. All of the time, paying attention to this like world of blogging and like the very early creators who were making money online. Uh, and we dive into all of that because it's a it's a fun process.
Yeah, I'd love to just like really quick in terms of your experience. I think you used MailChimp to start
Yeah.
with. And then this is so helpful to know that you were building apps because for me, I was like, man, I couldn't imagine like launching like a platform. Like that seems like such a difficult thing to do to like build a whole entire platform that's going to compete with these giants like MailChimp. And I don't know if Constant Contact was out back then, but
Oh, yeah.
there's a lot of email service providers out there that are giants. And so it's helpful to know that you had all this experience with app design and you kind of like merged what you knew in that space with, the problem that you were trying to solve with email. So what problem were you trying to solve? Why did you decide to create this platform?
Yeah. So after I left Unity and started working on freelance design, I was really inspired by people like Chris Gillibo, Tim Ferriss, and others like that who were talking about here's how you make money on the internet. And Chris Gillibo would do a lot of, he would make a guide on a very particular subject and then sell that. And so I was like, okay, let me write a book about how to design iPhone apps. And I had two thoughts with it. One, if I'm the guy who wrote the book on iPhone app design, then I'll get way more clients wanting to hire me to
Yeah.
design their app. Like the credibility will increase. And the second one was, well, if these guys are making money, I probably can too. And so I sat down, wrote a book. It was called the App Design Handbook. And as an aside, I struggled to build a habit to write consistently. And so I was like, I'm going to make an iPhone app to help me track this. And I made this app called Commit, which isn't around anymore, but there's other apps like it. And you just say, hey, I'm going to do this habit every day. and it just reminds you and then keeps track of the streak. And so uh, I, I had this for, I said I'm going to write 1,000 words a day. And I was at 80 days in a row when I published the book. And the next day, the iPhone app popped up and said, "Are you going to write 1,000 words today?" And I was like, "No, I finished writing the book." And so I ended up writing another. I wrote like a summary of how the launch went and all that, published it on my blog. And then, of course, the app popped up the next day, as it's going to do, and said, "Are you going to write 1,000 words today?" And I was like, "No." And so I ended up writing another book. So we get into all the numbers, but it was wild. Like, I just launched down this path of consistent writing for a long time. But my goal from the book was, I thought, okay, if I can get new clients and if I can make $10,000 over the lifetime of the book, that would be amazing. And so I launched it to an email list of 798 people on MailChimp. And everyone was telling me like social media and all of this is going to drive the sales, but it was really email that drove the sales. And so I made $12,000 in the first 24 hours.
Wow.
And I was blown away. And I never took on another freelance design client. I thought, this is a dream, making product income. But then the other thing was that email was driving all of these sales. And so I guess after that book, two things happened. One, I became obsessed with email and I was trying to learn everything I could about best practices. And then the second thing is I just kept writing because I didn't want to break the chain in this little iPhone app I had made. And so I ended up writing 1,000 words a day for another 90 days straight. And at the end of that, I published another book called Designing Web Applications, like following a similar model, but applied to a different medium. And that launched to a bigger email list of like 3,000 people. And I made $26,000 in the first day,
Wow.
$50,000 in the first month. And my last job that I quit a year earlier, I made $63,000 a year. So this was I'm now making almost in a month what I made in a year.
Yeah,
And
I know that
like the
feeling.
creator world is amazing. So it was a ton of fun.
That's amazing. So basically, you became a creator. Once you started writing these books, that's when you officially became a creator and you kind of never looked back in terms of being a creator. Is that right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And so that next year I made $250,000 as a creator, and I'm like, this is a dream come true. But in that, I'm obsessed with email, and I'm realizing like email is the secret to high earnings as a creator. I'd see these influencers who had, at the time, tens of thousands of followers on Instagram or something else, and they weren't making nearly the money that I was making. And so I realized like, oh, it's in the email list.
Well, where did you build your email list from? Like, if you were just starting out, where was it from? Like, where did you build the email list to start with when you had your books?
Yeah, so I built it from a lot of other blogs. I wrote lots of guest posts on other blogs, different like design and iPhone app development communities. You got to realize at the time, Twitter was going strong.
Yep.
But Instagram was only 2 years old at this time, maybe 3 years old. And so Instagram was not the powerhouse that it is now.
I remember.
Today, I would go all in, on either Instagram or LinkedIn, right? Or both. But yeah, so the emails were coming from, the blog and other communities. SEO was starting to be a thing. And then I just said like, all right, let me learn everything I can about email. And I would implement every best practice I could of like, let me give away a sample chapter. And then there's an automated sequence that gets you to buy the book afterwards. And here's how we're segmenting the list. And I just had to hack around MailChimp for all of this. And so then I said like, you know what? I'm going to start a email company just for content creators like me. It was called ConvertKit. And, I'm gonna build this up. So that became the next 12 years of my life. And then last year we rebranded from ConvertKit to Kit.
Yeah. We're actually transitioning to Kit at YAP Media. So that's like well underway, which I'm really actually from MailChimp to ConvertKit. Luckily, MailChimp is not my sponsor. Yeah, that's absolutely incredible. So you became a creator before the term creator economy was really created. This is
Yeah.
something I would say in the last year only is a term that I've really, maybe in the last 2 years, I've been really saying
I
creator
think creator
entrepreneur.
economy was,
Creator economy was there, but creator entrepreneurship,
yes.
that's like a new thing. I feel like in the last year or two, it's really started to bubble up where like everybody wants to be a creator entrepreneur and like almost all entrepreneurs are becoming creator entrepreneurs. How have you seen everything evolve?
Entrepreneurs are great at identifying points of leverage and then maximizing that. And so usually there's something where you figure out, oh, here's a distribution method, or here's a way that we can manufacture a product, or something like that, something that gives you leverage. And so something that you and I have known for a long time is that building an audience is insane leverage, probably the best leverage you could ever get. Because not only do you get distribution that you normally have to pay tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars for, but you get trust at the same time. And you get people saying like, "Oh, I trust Hala. I trust Nathan. What's their take on this thing?" And that makes a huge difference. And when you combine those, the leverage, and that, actually, I guess the third thing you get is relationships. You end up meeting all of these people who also have leverage, through their audience, the trust, and everything else. And so the compounding effects are insane. And so entrepreneurs used to say like, "Oh, that creator influencer thing that you're doing, that's interesting, but I'm running a real business." And now they come over and they say, "Actually, I'm sorry. You all have the best distribution, that exists in the world. I got tired of paying for attention, with my like Meta and Google ads. And now I want to get the attention for free. Teach me your ways." Because they're realizing I can build a massive business on the back of an audience. And, that's what's going to dominate, how attention and how businesses are built over the next decade.
Yeah, you talk about the creator flywheel. I'd love for you to kind of break down your philosophy around the creator flywheel and how that's different from traditional marketing funnels.
Yeah. Oh, man, there's so much. I could talk about flywheels forever.
I want to hear it.
Maybe first in flywheels, I think it's one of those words that a lot of people use and people don't actually know what it means.
Mm,
So I mentioned a trip to South Africa in 2008. And this is where I first came across a real life flywheel. And so we were installing this well at this orphanage in Maseru, which is the capital city of Lesotho. And electricity was inconsistent. Like they would have these rolling blackouts. And so we're like, oh, we can't put a pump on this. It's going to require electricity because otherwise the 200 kids at this orphanage are not going to have water whenever the power's out. And so then you're like, all right, we need a hand pump. And if you've ever been camping or something like that, you imagine like a long metal handle, and it's a lot of work to pump water up hundreds of feet. And so that's not going to work. And so it's like, okay, what exists out there that can take energy that you put in and compound that, not require electricity, and pump all this water? And that's a flywheel. So it's this big metal wheel that sits on top of the pump. And instead of this linear up and down energy of a hand pump, you get this rotational force where all the momentum that you put in doesn't reset, it carries forward. And so we put this flywheel on there, and at first when we started pumping it, it was really hard, like way harder than a hand pump would be. And that's actually true of a flywheel all across the board. If you get these, it's much slower and much harder to get a flywheel going. But once it builds momentum, that carries forward. And so instead of the same effort getting the same impact on a flywheel, a huge amount of effort gets very little impact, but then gradually the effort decreases and the impact increases until, on this flywheel on the well, at some point I'm spinning it with one finger. Like what I first had to lean in really hard to start, I'm now spinning with one finger and getting even more results than I was when I started. And so this works in real life physics. And it also works in business and audience building and everything else. So, let me give you a really simple example. Uh, if you write a weekly newsletter or any kind of content that you produce on a weekly basis, but using a newsletter as an example, a lot of people struggle with what to say. And so, say your newsletter goes out Tuesday at 10 a.m., probably Monday night at 9 p.m., you're like, oh, shoot. What am I going to send tomorrow? And so the old, like, kind of scattered process is where you'd be like, you're like brainstorming ideas, you're coming up with it, and you, through force of will, you get something out. But you can actually design a flywheel around that problem. And so instead, you could say, all right, when someone signs up for my newsletter, I'm going to send them a couple welcome emails with my best content. And then maybe email three, I'm going to send this really personal email and just say, like, hey, Nathan, it's Hala. Thanks so much for subscribing and check out the content. Just one quick question. What's your biggest struggle related to building your online business or your journey as an entrepreneur? Right. Or if we go back to me back in the day, it'd be, hey, what's your biggest struggle with learning how to design iPhone apps? Hit reply and let me know. And this is like plain text, looks like it was written in Gmail, and I just fired it off. It's maybe 2 sentences. People reply to that. I organize all of those replies into a label in Gmail. And now when I'm going, oh, what am I going to write about? I go into those replies and I say, oh, now I have people telling me their exact pain points and frustrations. So instead of brainstorming a hypothetical, I'm actually now looking at exact pain points that people have. I write an answer to that one person and then make it a little more generic. And I know that I have this highly useful newsletter that's going to go out. So then if we put it in flywheel form, the more subscribers I get, the more responses come through, the more frustrations I have, to pull from to solve with my newsletter. My newsletter goes out, which then helps me get more subscribers, which gets me more responses, which gets me more frustrations, and around we go. And so it takes something that was, like the hand pump version. It was difficult and painful, and turns it into, something that's, quite effortless.
Yeah.
And get to the point that, it becomes really, really easy to do. So last thing on the flywheels there's 3 laws to a flywheel. The first is that every step flows smoothly into the next step. So instead of like a linear process where you do something and then stop, the flywheel, everything flows all the way around until the last step goes smoothly into the first step, right? The more newsletters we send, the more subscribers we get. That's our loop closer. Second is that every step is easier with each rotation. So it gets just a little bit easier the more we do it. And that might be you're automating certain things, you're getting more consistent with it. And then the last one is that each rotation produces more than the previous rotation. And so that's where each time this goes around, we're getting more ideas and more subscribers. And it's just wild. I implement flywheels everywhere in my business. And it means that I can run my entire personal brand in a few hours a month instead of before where that was my full-time career.
I love this concept. I feel like I need to think about all my funnels and think about it in a flywheel. I've done these webinars now, sponsored webinars for like all these different brands for like 3 years now. And so in the beginning, it was really hard when we first started because I didn't really have an email list, but these webinars have a Zoom. And when people register, they give me their email. So now we've got a list of like 30,000 people that love to come to my webinars. And every time we do them, we get another, 2,000 emails that get added to the list. And it gets easier and easier to like just get basically like a sold out webinar or whatever it is,
Right.
Because it just is a flywheel effect. So that's like one example that I have in my business. I'd love to hear like, what about like somebody on YouTube or like a creator on social media? How can they leverage this flywheel concept?
Yeah, well, let's take YouTube as an example. We always pursue YouTube subscribers. That's the metric. But YouTube is a very algorithm-driven platform. So if you have 10,000 subscribers, that is not a guarantee that you get 10,000 views. It's more like a guarantee that you get maybe 1,000 views. And then if the video is decent, then maybe you get 3,000 views. And only if it's great does it reach all of your subscribers and go on from there. So what a lot of YouTubers do is they build newsletters and email lists combined with their YouTube channel. And so the way it works is you put out a video and say, hey, I'm teaching this topic end to end, right? Maybe I'm teaching product launch strategies in my YouTube video. Well, at the end of it, I might say, hey, if you enjoyed this and you want to deep dive on it, I have a free 5-day email course that gives you a lot more, in-depth on product launch strategies. And so now I'm converting my engaged viewers through to the email list. And then I'm going to send a regular newsletter, say every week, staying in touch with those people. Well, now when I put out my next YouTube video, instead of hoping that YouTube promotes it to all of my subscribers, I actually have this email list and I have the ability to push content to them. And so I'm going to publish my next video, which is all about, um, I don't know what, I don't know what it's about, but the next thing after launch strategies. And but now I'm going to email the 1,000 people that signed up and say, hey, go check out this video. They're going to go there and watch it. YouTube's going to be like, oh, this is a good video, right? And they're going to see the watch time and the retention because your biggest fans showed up. They're going to discount it a little bit because they know that you sent those people rather than YouTube sending it. But then that video is going to get more reach, attracting more people. And if you have a call to action at the end, back to your free email course or your checklist, your guide, or whatever else, then you're getting more people on your email list. And so if you imagine, this flywheel goes around, every step moves super smoothly into the next. It gets easier with each rotation, right? We can optimize our conversion rates, make our landing page better, our calls to action, all of that. And then it produces more with every rotation because, the first rotation I had 1,000 people to point to YouTube. Rotation 25, I might have 5,000 people. And so I have 5 times as much attention to direct back to drive newsletter. And so it's getting me views on YouTube. And if anything were to ever happen to my channel, or I would decide, oh, I want to do the same strategy, but on LinkedIn or on some other platform. Well, guess what? I have 5,000 people that are engaged with my stuff that I can point to anywhere.
Yeah.
And so you see flywheels like that play out all the time. And I think a lot of people do them, but they don't clearly understand how simple of a flywheel it is. They don't view it in that way.
Yeah. And if you view it in that way, you can kind of pay attention to what's breaking down or how can I make this better and faster. And the other thing that you didn't really mention is the acceleration through the engagement that you get with the people commenting and watching the video is actually going to boost the video being shared through interspaced algorithms. Something that I think about with email, like the way that I think about email is that it's sort of like old school social media. So algorithms used to be friend graph based, where it was based on how many people you had following you. And if you put out a post, it was basically top of the feed based on relevancy, based on recency, right? So it was all based on like just a chronological timeline, how many followers you had. And then now algorithms are totally different. Like you don't have control. To your point, even if you have 100,000 subscribers, 100,000 people are not going to see your stuff. It's all based on interest relevancy and what those users are searching for and finding. And you only get sent to them if you have engagement and if that user is actually looking for that content and actively, searching for it and engaging on content similar to yours. Whereas email is just like old algorithms. So it's like a social media platform that you basically control, right? And there's no algorithm to kind of work through.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And we can complain about the new social media algorithms and be like, oh, it's not fair that I worked so hard for these 10,000 YouTube subscribers and only 10% of them are going to see my new video. Or you could instead accept that that's the way that it is. And in a way, this is good. Because before, if you had amazing content, it might get to double the number of people that you normally reach. Now on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, if you have amazing content, it might reach 10 to 50 times as many people as you normally reach. And so you want to play both games where you say, okay, all the social platforms have moved to reach and discovery and interest-based. And so let's play that game really well. Let's make our content really, really shareable. And everything is a double-edged sword. And so wins there mean that we're not going to reach the same number of people with our content that doesn't go viral or spread. And that's okay, because that's why we have the email list. And so we get to have this steady foundation that we just keep adding another layer of bricks to every time as we build up, this amazing foundation of our email list. And then we ride the spikes and the viral waves and everything else of social media. And because then it's a huge asset for us, the fact that the algorithms, are so over-indexed on distribution.
I love that. So many gems in that part of the conversation. Let's talk about ladders of wealth creation. So you've got this framework about ladders of wealth creation. I'd love for you to kind of break down the different stages, and then I want to play a
Yeah.
game with you related to this.
Okay. That sounds good. So with the ladders of wealth, this is an essay that I wrote a few years ago based on just observations in the world. I was really confused. Like, wait, why do some people make way more money than other people? Why, uh, why is there a big difference between income that you earn and like actual wealth? And then even going back to my web design days, why is it that when someone says, "Oh, I have this idea for a new app, it's going to be Uber for dog walkers"? Why do I immediately cringe and be like, "Oh God, no, you should never do that. Like that's insanely hard." And so I tried to make one framework that breaks this down, and that's the ladders of wealth. And so I have four different ladders. And the idea is that as you move up between these ladders and move across between ladders, then your ability to earn and your ability to build wealth increases. But at the same time, the difficulty increases. And you have to learn skills all the way along. The key thing in making money is that it's a skill. And so you have to learn the skills as you move along. And if you try to do something wild and crazy, like jump all the way from the bottom of ladder 1 to the top of ladder 4, which building a social network or building a Uber for dog walkers, it's like a marketplace. It's like the hardest thing you could ever do. And if you try to do that without any skills, like it's not going to work. And so instead, how do we layer these things on gradually? So that first ladder is just time for money. And this is where usually we all start. This was me, $6 an hour at Wendy's. And I had to learn some skills there. How to show up, how to do what I say I was going to do. Have the outside accountability, right? If I don't show up on time, like I'm gonna get fired. You do that 3 times in a row, and they're gonna be like, "Get out of here,"
Yeah.
But on that ladder of time for money, you can go pretty high. I jumped off that ladder onto the next one pretty quickly, but many doctors are still on that ladder. Just their salary is really, really high, but earnings are ultimately capped. If you jump to the next ladder, it's your own services business. This is you working for someone else for being the owner. And at the base of that, maybe you're doing hourly work for a client. We got to learn some new skills now because no one's making you show up on time. No one's making you do the work. And so you're just not going to, you're going to get fired eventually by the client or something else.
Is this you solo right now in this second rung? You solo providing services like freelance?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And then if we move up, we got to learn how to charge by the project, right? That's a whole set of skills. You can earn way more money if you get a little bit of separation between, hey, I'll build you this website for $50 an hour to I'll build you this website for $1,000. All of a sudden, if this takes, less than a certain number, this takes less than 20 hours, our hourly rate just went up. And you can learn a lot in there. And then as you move to the top of that ladder, we're talking about like managing a team and doing service work, right? Now we've introduced a little more leverage. All the way throughout these ladders, we're getting more and more leverage as we go. So now I could pay someone else to do that work. And there's a lot of skills that we've learned up until this point. Now, if you jump to the next ladder, which is productized services, really productizing anything, then you're starting to sell like a fixed scope for a fixed price. So that might be like, hey, I do web design audits for $1,000. But the key thing here is you have to learn somewhere in this journey how to sell without a conversation. When I'm selling web design services, you and I are going to talk over Zoom or we're going to go out to coffee, and I'm selling one-to-one. But if I'm doing a productized service, I need to be able to sell it on a website. And I need you to buy without talking to me. Whether it's a $100 consultation call or a $10,000 custom project, I need to get to the point that the copywriting is there. I need a website. I need a domain. I need payment processing. And then as you keep going up, you can get into recurring revenue. So maybe it's like, hey, we're going to I'm going to edit 4 videos a month for you. And that is a recurring retainer that you pay for at $1,000 a month. Like all of a sudden, I get 10 or 15 of those clients and I've got a good process, all that. Like I'm making good money and it's recurring. Like you're learning all kinds of stuff. Uh, so that's ladder three. And then ladder four, the final ladder is selling products. And there's versions of this that's really easy. And then all the way up to things that are really, really hard. And so like an easy thing is selling an ebook, right? It's fairly easy to make an ebook relative to like making software, but we still have to sell it. We still need those skills from the previous ladder of how to make a website, how to process payments, how to do copywriting. Those skills still come in handy. Other things are you could sell into an existing marketplace. So let's say that a product you could do is you could have a guest house that you rent out on Airbnb. You don't have to really create demand for that because Airbnb is doing that for you. You're putting it into a marketplace, and so that's great because now like when you have to make the product and create the demand and all of that, that's hard. Or for me, when I was selling iPhone apps, it's like I had to make the product. Software was hard, but it's in the app store already exists. People are going on there searching for things to solve their problems. So I'm selling into an existing marketplace. But then as you work your way up, physical products, e-commerce, those are really hard. Software as a service is really hard. And then at the very pinnacle is marketplaces and social networks, because anytime there's network effects involved, it takes so much to get traction, and there's just an insane amount of complexities.
So network is like creating a network is like the top.
Yeah, it's the hardest thing to do in business. Because if you think about Craigslist or something like that, right? It doesn't provide immediate value. It's only good if I come there looking for things and those things are actually there, to buy. Or if you're selling something and there's actually people coming to buy it. And so it's just really, really hard problems to solve when you have to get two sides of a marketplace at once.
Love that. So succinctly, what are the 4 stages of that ladder?
Yeah, so it's time for money.
Okay.
And then second one is building your own services business, really working for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Third is productizing that in some way, really being able to sell without someone else there, without a direct conversation. And then the last one is products all the way up. And there's really a lot to it. But with that framework, you can understand how, I guess a couple things that are key to understand.
Yeah.
First, if you switch ladders, you should expect your income to decrease temporarily. When I switched ladders from, running my services business to productized services, my income went down quite a bit. Even moving between rungs on the ladder, when I went from selling digital products, I was making $250,000 a year. And I'm like, I'm going to climb this ladder and I'm going to do software as a service. It took me 6 more years for me. Like my income dipped down super low. It took me 6 years to make $250,000 a year again. So you should expect that moving ladders or moving rungs means a dip in income. The next thing is that you can skip ahead. So you could say, I'm going to go from working a job to jumping all the way ahead and selling digital products. You can do that, but you still have to learn all the steps along the way, all the skills at each step. So you can learn them gradually, or you can say, I'm going to make this huge leap, and it might take you years to achieve this thing at the end. Because you still have to learn how to file for an LLC, how to, all of the stuff that you would have learned like at the bottom of ladder 2. But now you got to learn it as you jump all the way to the bottom of ladder 4. And I think the third thing that's really important is an audience will help you make this jump. And that's what you and I have learned, it's been the defining factor of our careers, is that we end up with hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people who follow our journeys and watch us make these leaps across ladders or climbing rungs or trying new things. And they cheer us on and they support us and they make introductions. So when you're saying, you know what, I'm going to start a podcast network. which is an incredibly hard thing to do.
Is that ladder 4? I was going to ask you, is that 4 or 3?
I think that would be on ladder 4. Um, it, you know, it could be, you could make an argument for either case, um, because you are productizing and standardizing some of these services. Right. You're selling advertisements, helping to book demand and all of that. But you're starting to get these network effects. So
yeah, maybe in between. The 3.5.
yes, but as you really have this community and this audience, they're cheering for you and they're helping to make you successful. And so as you make these jumps between ladders or you climb up, your chance of success is, more than double based on the fact that you have an audience. Versus if you're, imagine trying to build a podcast network, but
you never
or
had
any,
a podcast, you never had sponsorships, you never ran an agency.
let's say you were just the behind the scenes person, right? So maybe you did all of those things, but you were just behind the scenes and you had no public reputation.
That'd be way harder.
There are things that you can do in this journey of building wealth that give you insane advantages. And it usually comes back to what has leverage. And if you study and learn that, then you'll be in really good shape.
Okay, so let's dig into this a bit because I love this idea of creator ladder. So I'm going to read a type of creator to you. We're going to play a game. I want you to tell me what rung they're on and what skills they need to learn or things they need to do to move up to the next level. So an Etsy creator, we'll go to the first one, an Etsy creator who's making and shipping handmade jewelry.
Ooh, okay. So they're selling products, but it feels a lot like maybe a product as a service because it's handmade. And so if you think about if we want to introduce more leverage into this,
yeah,
we have two aspects of that we can do it. First, we need to get more attention. We're selling to an existing ecosystem on Etsy, but if we had our own audience, that would drive more sales. And then the other thing is we need to be able to sell product, or we need to be able to manufacture the product better. So if it stays handmade, we're always going to be capped unless we hire more people. So the handmade version is really, I would call it a product as service because you are directly tied to the output, but you are selling into, it's being sold online without you having a conversation. You're not having to call up and be like, hey, Hala, I'd love for you to buy, you're not doing one-to-one sales. Like you've got this mass sales. So it is a product as service. And if we wanted to move to, a product that has scale, then we would have to automate or be able to manufacture in bulk, either through hiring 20 more people or, who are doing that handcrafted work at scale, or by switching to something that could be manufactured in a factory.
Mm-hmm. And to your point, like not just leveraging Etsy's brand, right? And their audience, creating your own audience. Okay, a TikTok influencer with 250,000 followers who only earns money from brand deals.
Yeah, you're selling a service at that point, right? And so you might have some of those people coming to you, but those brands saying, hey, I'd love to get in front of your audience. But ultimately you're saying, okay, this, a series of featured posts, that's $10,000 or $8,000. And here's what we could offer. And they're going to say, oh, can you include an email to your email list at the same time? Like everything is bespoke and custom. You could productize that more where you could say, hey, if you want to get in front of my audience, fill out this form, pay automatically, and we don't get on a call. But that's still very much a product as service.
What would they do to kind of scale that?
Selling their own products is a game changer.
Yeah.
Like there's a group of people that are incredibly good at selling sponsorships, and they make a huge amount of money in sponsorships. You're one of them. But most creators earn significantly more money for the same level of attention if they're selling their own products.
Yeah.
And so if you make that move, let's say...
and is courses a product to you? Like courses?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like okay.
And, you watch these creators make hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars off of their digital products, whether it's courses or something else. Like, yeah, that is absolutely moving into ladder 4. And then they're going to earn so much more. Let's say that, go back to COVID or even like 2022. both those times brand dollars really dried up.
Yeah.
And so the creators who were selling their own products really made, like, their income stayed way more consistent than those that were relying on whether brands felt like the current interest rates meant that it was a good time to be spending money.
Yeah. And that's another great thing about an audience is that you can pivot really quickly because you always have people that want to buy from you. So I feel like this is a really good transition. We mentioned courses, and I know you have another piece of your, another philosophy that you always talk about, which is teaching everything that you know, right? And not holding back in terms of what you're teaching. So talk to us about how teaching really builds trust.
Yeah. So teaching everything you know really came from this idea of what should I teach and why should anyone listen to me? Because I always thought that there were beginners and then intermediate people and practitioners who we learn things and we implement it. And then there's this other group over here, and they are the experts. And I can't teach something until I'm an expert. Otherwise, people will laugh at me, they'll make fun of me, and they'll be like, Nathan, who do you think you are to be out here teaching? Where's your degree? Where's all of that? Right? Like, they're going to find out you dropped out of college when you were 17. Like, you have no credibility. And so I would see people making money and building a blog and all of that teaching. And I'd be like, oh man, I wish I was an expert like them. But then I realized something. People don't teach because they're experts. We perceive them as experts because they teach. And you can actually look throughout history at key historical figures that we know now and start to break it down and be like, wait, hold on. Why do we know that? Like, if I say Marco Polo, we know who Marco Polo was, right? He explored the Silk Road. He did all of this. He was the first to discover the path to China. He wasn't at all. Like, plenty of people had done it before him. And so you're like, wait a second, why? He went along on a trip with his uncles. I couldn't tell you his uncle's names. We know Marco Polo's name because he wrote about it. He didn't say, now that I am the person who discovered this and I am the foremost expert on, the Silk Road to China, I will write about it from my place of expertise. No, he was just the one to document it. Same thing with Paul Revere, right? In the famous, lanterns where the British are coming, all of that. There were a bunch of writers that went out. But Paul Revere's name is mentioned in the famous poem. And so that's why we know who he is. And so you don't take this approach of saying, oh, I have to be an expert and then I'll teach. No, you say, okay, I'm going to teach everything that I know. If I learned something last week, I'm going to teach it. I'm going to document that because there's someone else who's following along behind me and that'll be useful to them. When I was learning how to program, I was learning to install Ruby on Rails on my computer. And this is like the most basic thing. And I could not figure it out. And I read these articles from the experts, people who made the programming languages, who built the frameworks, all this stuff. I followed their tutorials step by step and I could not figure it out. And then I came across a tutorial from someone who was a beginner and said, hey, here's how I did it as a beginner. And something that was so obvious to the experts that they'd skipped over, the beginner was like, hey, this part really matters. I got stuck on it. I was like, thank you so much. Because from their place of expertise, they're like, how would anyone not know to do step C? Like, that's obvious. I didn't even mention it. It was so obvious. But as a beginner, that was what I needed. I needed someone to speak to the beginner level. And ever since I encountered that and real understanding like why we know Marco Polo and Paul Revere and all of these names, I realized, oh, I just have to teach everything that I know. It's not, is this important enough? Am I important or famous enough? Do I have credentials to say that I'm valid to teach this? It's like, no, here's something that I learned. Here's when I learned it and life experience that I learned it from. And I hope it's useful to you or someone else. And that built my entire audience. It built my entire career. And I got over all the imposter syndrome because I'm like, I'm not an expert. I'm just a guy. And I'm going to say, like, here's what I learned last week. I hope it's helpful to you. And turns out tens of thousands of people are like, yes, that was helpful to me. Thank you very much.
I love that. I feel like that is such a good learning lesson for anybody who's a creator and has like imposter syndrome of being worried about putting content online. Something that I also say kind of related to this is that everybody has their own relationship with their audience. So
Mhm.
I think about myself when I first started as a podcaster, and my relationship was a reporter. I would interview experts and then I would report out what I learned. I wasn't necessarily expert, but I would report it out. Some people can be a cheerleader or like a hype man. Some people are more of like, a mentor or like a teacher or something like this. You don't always have to be the expert, but I love the way that you phrased it, like that you should just teach everything you know. And, even if it's the beginner level, some people might need that.
Yeah, and I think that now information is everywhere. It used to be that information had a premium to it, like, oh, we were hungry for new information. Now there's just a surplus of it. Now what I think we're looking for is we're looking for stories. And so we want to learn things, but we want to do it following someone going on a journey. Like I think he's probably 19 or 20 years old. So like a kid who's in college who is going on this journey to fly a plane all the way around the world to every continent. And he's putting that whole thing on Instagram. And I love following it because here's someone doing something hard and going on a journey. If you are trying to learn anything, whether it's computer programming or sewing or building an audience or all of that, go on a journey and say, here's who I am. Here's what I'm trying to learn. And I'm going to document everything I learned along the way. And you will just see so many doors open to you where people are like, oh, I'd love to help you with that. Or thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to go on the same journey. Or I'm just 6 months behind you or whatever else. And then you're also not stuck in this problem of what do I share and teach? You're just like, well, let me share what I learned this week. And it feels relevant and actionable. And it comes from a very human place. Whereas today, so much content, like if we want the facts, like go to ChatGPT. ChatGPT is great at facts. I want to learn the facts, but I want to learn it from the human experience and I want to learn it from following an actual person.
Yeah. I want to go back to your entrepreneurship journey because what you've built with Kit is so impressive. Like the more that I get to know you and get to know your background and just how impressive your company is now that I'm transferring my stuff over to Kit, I saw your awesome studios. You're building all these amazing studios. First of all, I know you're really transparent with your financials, so I'm happy to kind of ask you this question. How much
Yeah.
money did you make last year?
Yeah. So we made about $40 million last year. And we're
Incredible.
on track to make about 50 million this year. And
And
we've
how much
got,
was profit of that?
yeah, profit was about 7%. So, handful of millions. We invest very heavily.
Yeah, you're growing.
And, so we're trying to see what can we spend money on that makes creator businesses better. And most of the time, that's a whole lot of software engineers and building a better product. But then also it's things like Kit Studios, where we build out world-class production studios. We have Boise, where I am now. We've got Chicago, and we're working on New York City.
And you have some huge
And so,
creators. You have Tim Ferriss, who we mentioned earlier. Who are some of the big creators on Kit now?
oh man, there's so many. You've got everything from celebrities like Dua Lipa, Matthew McConaughey, Tom Brady, through to the biggest content creators like Andrew Huberman, James Clear, Tim Ferriss. You got comedians like Hassan Minhaj. Um, any industry, we have pretty much the biggest names. There's 63,000 paying customers that Kit has. And we power an insane number of newsletters now, which is pretty wild considering it started as a better way for me to grow an audience.
Yeah,
to
your
start.
own app that you created. It is really, really wild, but it just goes to show that whole like you can't skip the ladders, right?
Right.
You can't skip the ladders. You kind of like had all the foundation to become the entrepreneur that you are and to have the company you have. Same thing with me. It was like I had to take it step by step until I had the pinnacle of what a podcaster could have in terms of the industry, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So I hear you on that. Why do you make your financials so transparent? Why are you so transparent about that?
Yeah. I grew up in an environment where money was very scarce and I did not understand how money is made. It was a secret. It was a mystery. And I didn't even, when I went to negotiate my first salary, I didn't even know how to do that. And I called up, my dad didn't come from that world, so I didn't ask him. I called up my girlfriend's dad and was like, hey, I'm going to have to negotiate a salary, on Monday. And I don't know how to do it. He was like, "Oh, come on over, I'll tell you." So he like gave me all these tips and then gave me a little book that someone had written on salary negotiation. And um, that worked out super well. Actually, a funny story on this. So in the salary negotiation book, they were saying like, don't speak first on salary, and when someone says a salary, be really thoughtful in the response. Like, don't just jump on it right away and be like, yes, that'd be great, or like, no, that won't work. Like, be very thoughtful and considerate. And so I had thought if I could get 45 to $50,000 a year in this job in 2009, that would be amazing. And so we're sitting down to lunch with the COO of this company, and we're talking through, and I had made a crucial mistake, or it ended up being a great move. I had ordered this bagel sandwich, which was very hard to chew. And so I picked up my sandwich, and right as I'm taking a bite, he says, "We'd like to offer you the job at $50,000 a year." And I took this bite, too big of a bite. And so I'm chewing, and I was raised with good manners, and so you don't talk with your mouth full. And so in my head, I'm going, $50,000 a year, that's more than I was expecting. Like, that would be fantastic. Instant yes. But I'm still chewing and chewing. And so then he goes, like, he starts to get a little uncomfortable. Like, did he just offend me with like, was that too low of a number? And he's like, 50, or, we could do $60,000 a year. And I like finish chewing and say $60,000 a year would be great. Thank you. And so in that time that I took the bite, I like implemented the feedback from the book, salary negotiation as a skill, basically. I moved up a little bit in the ladder. But really it came down to the fact that I had the worst timed bite, and
Really good
that
luck.
pause ended up making me an extra $10,000.
I love that story. Yeah, silence is so powerful. People, if you just are silent, people will want to fill in that space with just more information. So that's such a good negotiation tactic. All right. So you told us why you share your financials. You also bootstrapped your company, correct? You never
Yeah.
took any money. And I found out, I had no idea about this. I can't believe I didn't know that Spotify offered you $200 million and you turned it down. Why? It's a lot of
Man, there's
money.
so much
That's like everybody's like, I mean, like for me, if somebody, $100 million is my number for YAP Media. Like I would love to be valued at $100 million company and exit, that's really big. So why did you turn it down?
Yeah. I always said I'm not going to sell this company because I love what I'm doing. I love the community that I'm serving, all of that. And then that's easy to say when it's like offers from private equity or they're not that compelling. But like Spotify has a big brand saying, hey, we're interested in buying you. We'd love to talk. Here's, 200 million is kind of the number we're thinking about. That was really compelling. And so I had to actually like go sit down and journal on it and say like, all right, do I want to do this? Like, um, and really I thought about, okay, what would I do with $200 million? Right? Because I haven't raised any outside capital. So like I still own 85% of the business
I was
today.
going to ask you, how much do you own?
Yeah, it's a lot. And so in that, I really realized that I was going to go back and do the exact same thing. I wanted to build a platform serving creators, and I like to make things. In the early days, I'd make something and no one would see it. Today, I make something and like 60,000 people use it the next day. And that's super special. I love the impact. And I love the team that I work with. And, there's people who are like, oh, I want to be a solopreneur. And I'm thrilled for them. That's not what I want. I love working with a team. And so I realized I would just turn around and do the exact same thing that I want to do now, or that I'm doing right now. And so I realized like, no, I don't want to sell. The other thing is, they say the first rule of compounding is to not interrupt it prematurely. And we mentioned MailChimp early on. And even though I started my business because I was frustrated with their product, I really, really admire their business. They built that business for more than 20 years. And actually, it took them 8 years to hit their first $1 million in revenue. And they exited doing $1 billion in revenue, and they sold for $12 billion.
Wow.
And so I'm realizing like, I'm enjoying the journey. I'm meeting people, sharing the journey, basically doing my life's work. and I get to keep doing it year after year, and I get to keep compounding. And
Yeah.
like, let's not
And you're
interrupt the
making great
compounding
money.
myself.
Yeah. Making great
Yeah.
money and everything like that.
And so, yeah, I'm very passionate about what we're doing. And if I like, I don't know, did a time machine and somehow woke up 10 years from now and someone was like, yeah, you're still running Kit, I'd be like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I would not be surprised at all if 10 years from now I'm still running the exact same company.
Yeah. So talk to me about you have 85% of your equity. So right now I also am similar. I have like 90%, but I've decided that I'm going to actually give Jason a huge chunk of the company and help to really come in and maybe even become CEO of the company
Yeah.
as I build the brand and more of the face. So just curious about how selfishly how you've approached giving away equity. Is it to your team or is it for investments? Like, have you ever given away equity to your team?
Yeah. So most of the equity has been, or all the equity that I've given away has been to the team. A few team members over time have sold equity to outside investors in these secondary rounds that we've helped facilitate. But really, I just, based on the role in the market, after them equity, it vests over 4 years. And then we do refresher grants. I've got people that have been on my team for 8 years or more. And it really helps for team members to be deeply invested, um, for them to, share in the upside. And I think just for us to be totally aligned.
Yeah.
So actually think about compensation in 4 quadrants. So if you imagine a grid, a little 2x2 grid, and across the top, we've got guaranteed, and guaranteed versus performance based. And then along the side, we have short term versus long term. So short term guaranteed is salary. Long term guaranteed is a 401k match. And short term performance based is profit sharing. And then long term performance based is equity. And I think that the best compensation packages for your team really hit on all 4 of those things. And so you're not saying like, oh, I'm barely going to pay you anything, but here's a bunch of equity, and in this moonshot, if we hit it big, you'll be rich. Or I'm not going the other way, like MailChimp did, and saying, oh, we're never going to sell, so we're only paying cash. And then years later, when they do sell for $12 billion, the employees barely make anything. You can actually just walk this middle line and say, look, we're profitable, we're paying good salaries, we're contributing your 401k, but you also have equity, and we can have this really balanced package. So that's the way that I think about it.
And so you've never had, do you consider any of your employees to be your business partners or no?
No, I've never had a co-founder at that level. Now I have an executive team. It's amazing, and we've built them up over time and really recruited. And so we have this core group that really runs the business. And even if I were to take a step back, they would run the business. But never had a co-founder.
So you launched your company with $5,000 and you were public about the launch of this company. Why did you make that launch public facing and transparent like that?
I learned the power of an audience. And then audience was going to do a couple things for me. First, if I had thousands of people following my journey, I knew they'd help me. And that happened a lot where I'd say, hey, I'm really struggling with copywriting. How do you write a sales page for a software company and not make it generic and boring? Well, someone in my audience, who's an amazing copywriter, her name's Amy Hoy, said, oh, let's jump on Skype. I'll help you with that. You can tell it was a long time ago. It's the reference Skype.
Yeah.
But, and so she did. And I wrote a post about that. Or I'd be able to call other people up for advice. And the next thing is it gave me accountability. I had a bad habit of jumping in on something and working on it for a couple weeks and then losing energy and momentum. And that's tough. But I knew that if there were hundreds or thousands of people being like, so Nathan, what progress did you make on your business this week? That I would actually make progress and stay consistent. And then the last thing is I knew it would help me get customers. It wasn't, I wasn't exactly targeting content creators with all of my blog posts about building a software company, but I knew there was overlap. And so those 3 things made it absolutely worth it to go on this journey in public and, tell the story that I along the way. And a fun little side effect is that I have all these great blog posts about what I was thinking in March 2013 when we got our first customers or pre-sold this or that. And, um, it's just such a special thing to have years later.
You must be really proud of like the little baby steps that you took in the beginning.
Yes, 100%.
Okay, last question for you, and then we're going to close out this interview. AI is taking over the creator economy world. Tell us what you think, the good and the bad of AI. What's your perspective?
Yeah, so I think that technology has always innovated everything that we're doing, right? Even like the Industrial Revolution, that ended a whole bunch of farm jobs, but ultimately I think society was better off because of it. The printing press, the internet, like all of these things are required huge technological shifts that are required for you and I to be doing what we're doing now. And I think AI is probably bigger than all of those combined. Uh, and so it's hard to know what's going to happen. I think that on the good side, you know, we've democratized so many things. Like if you want a really great book editor, someone who's going to critique all of your work or your essays, AI is just sitting right there for $20 a month. And you can be like, hey, what are all the logical flaws in my argument here? And it'll be like, oh, let me tell you. And it'll be like, you made a leap here. This is a personal anecdote that you extrapolated, all this stuff. You just have to pay thousands of dollars for someone to do that. There's all kinds of busy work that you don't have to do anymore. Similar to how Figma and Photoshop made design so much faster. Well, now you're getting a much bigger leap in AI. It just happens to hit every single industry. The other side of it is it's easier to generate nonsense than ever before and just noise. And so it's basically like, what do you do to stand out as a creator in a world where we can just generate whole creators, right? So I think you have to tell more personal stories. I think you have to connect with your audience. You have to think before you write something or before you podcast it, like, is this unique to me or could anyone share this anecdote? One thing that I'm worried about is AI taking out the bottom rung of every career ladder. Because if you think about like maybe a partner at a law firm isn't going to be replaced by AI, but the junior associates are, right? The beginner web designer, Cursor and Replit and all these, pretty good at doing that. And so you have these experts at the top of their careers wielding AI to do like 10 times what they could possibly before and no longer needing the junior associates and whatever else. And they have all the expertise and discernment to know, oh, this is great output, this is not. But I worry that if AI eliminates the bottom rungs of all of these jobs, then no one's learning how to do that. Like I was talking to a friend of a friend who's a college professor, and he was saying he allows everyone to use AI in the classroom, writing papers, all of that. He has no problem with that because that's the future.
Yeah.
That's what's expected.
Yeah.
The problem that he has is that no one's doing the reading anymore. And so instead of reading this literature, these great works, or all these other things that you could really learn from and build taste, now everyone's just saying, hey, ChatGPT, what's the summary of this book? Oh, okay, cool. Now I can do this thing. And so I'm worried about what happens if in 15 years, no one has a sense of taste and style and all of that, and really these fundamental skills. And so if we can get all the benefits from AI and really learn the taste and the wisdom and the skills necessary for that world, I think we're going to be in a great shape. If we continue to eliminate the bottom rungs and, the next generation doesn't learn all these core things, then I think we've got a serious problem.
Yeah. Wow, that was really eye-opening. Like I never thought about it that way. So I'm really glad that you brought it up. It makes me like, for everybody tuning in who's more in their like 30s and 40s, I feel like we're in a better situation because we have a lot of the foundational skills. And everybody who's younger, I think the lesson is still learn those skills, still try to learn everything you can and not just, skip over and get the cliff notes of everything.
Actually read the books.
Yeah, actually read the books. Nathan, I always close my show with 2 questions I ask all my guests. The first one is, what is one actionable thing our young and profiters can do today to become more profitable tomorrow?
Document your journey. If you do that, the thing that you just learned, whether you do it on a daily Instagram post or a weekly newsletter, any of those things, just just document that journey. Even if it's just for you, you'll be blown away at the skills that you build and how much better you get in 6 months or a year. And that's worth doing it just for that reason. But chances are you'll end up building a following of hundreds or thousands of people who want to help you achieve your dreams.
And what would you say your secret to profiting in life is?
Oh, I look for leverage wherever I can. I think that I would read a book called The Almanac of Naval Ravikant, which is it sounds like an intimidating book.
Almanac of
It's
what? Revolve what?
The Almanac of Naval Ravikant, who
Okay.
Naval is a famous investor. I think he's a billionaire, a very, very successful guy who's like sort of a business philosopher. And my friend Eric wrote this book of like all of his wisdom, including he has a Twitter thread called How to Get Rich Without Getting Lucky. And, just all of these great things. But really, the core thing is that this book breaks down leverage and helps you understand the 4 types of leverage, how to implement it in your life and business. And if you do that, you'll just have an easier time in everything that you do.
I love that. I'm going to get that book and I'm actually going to read it.
Do it.
Nathan, thank you so much for your time. Where can everybody learn more about you, Kit, and everything that you do?
Yeah. So I have a podcast called The Nathan Barry Show. It's had amazing guests like Mark Manson and yours truly. Hala, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, it's fun.
So check that out if you love podcasts. And then go to kit.com if you want to build the newsletter and, have email powering your creator business.
Amazing. Nathan, I'll stick all those links in the show notes. This was an awesome interview. I'm so excited to put it out. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
YAP Gang, hearing Nathan go from shy kid to flipping burgers to turning down a $200 million offer and then building Kit into a $40 million a year business was just so inspirational. That's the power of betting on yourself. That's the power of the creator economy. Because in today's world, when you build an audience, you build leverage. And with leverage, you build freedom. Nathan didn't just build a business, he built momentum, trust, and long-term impact, one piece of content at a time. So if you're a creator, founder, or aspiring entrepreneur, I hope you feel as fired up as I do right now, because what Nathan just gave us isn't just advice. It's a roadmap for building a business and a life on your own terms. In the creator economy, leverage is everything. Nathan reminded us that building an audience isn't about likes or followers. It's about trust and distribution, 2 of the most powerful assets you can own. When you nurture that audience, collaborate with others, and reinvest your momentum, you activate the creator flywheel, a loop that doesn't just grow your business, it sustains it. You stop pushing uphill and start spinning with purpose. We also got deep into Nathan's ladders of wealth creation, a framework every entrepreneur needs to understand. If you've ever felt stuck trading time for money, Nathan's breakdown shows you how to start climbing. Whether you're freelancing, running a service business, or just getting started with digital products, the goal is the same: build leverage, create equity, and learn the skills that take you to the next rung. And don't forget, switching ladders might slow you down temporarily, but skipping the learning never works. Your audience is your shortcut. Your content is your currency. And here's something that truly stuck with me. People don't teach because they're experts. They're perceived as experts because they teach. That's the heartbeat of Nathan's Teach Everything You Know philosophy. You don't have to wait until you're perfect. Share the journey, share your lessons, share what you just learned yesterday. Because teaching doesn't just grow your audience, it makes you magnetic, and it turns creators into leaders. And yes, AI is changing the game, but Nathan gave us the simplest way to stand out. Tell personal stories, make it uniquely yours, because while algorithms may prioritize reach, people prioritize connection. So if you're listening to this and building something, whether you're writing a newsletter, coaching clients, or launching a course, or still figuring it out, just remember, you already have what it takes to create leverage. You already have stories worth teaching, and you're already on the ladder. Your only job is to keep on climbing. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Young and Profiting Podcast. If this conversation with Nathan Barry lit a fire under you, if it got you thinking bigger, dreaming bolder, or finally seeing that next step on your creator path, then don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend or fellow builder or somebody who's ready to stop playing small and start scaling smart. And hey, if this episode gave you even one idea you can use to grow, thrive, or level up, do us a quick favor and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening right now. That small action makes a huge difference to us at Young and Profiting Podcast. If you want to check out all of our videos, you can head over to YouTube. If you want to follow me, you can do so at YAP with Hala or LinkedIn. Just search for my name. It's Hala Taha. And of course, a massive shout out to my YAP team. As always, you guys are awesome. This is your host, Hala Taha, aka the Podcast Princess, signing off.